Forward. I know everyone's off as well. So we're going to get started. Thanks for being here today. I know that we had a lot of people who have registered, so they're going to watch the recording. But super excited. With these calls, what we usually do is I try to do content for about 10 minutes. And then we have a breakout session where you get to connect with one another. During the breakout session, if you can just maybe, hopefully you can put your cameras on and connect with one another. And I know some people are having lunch or they're in different parts of the world for whatever, doing something different. But it's also, otherwise just connect via chat as well. And this is really meant for you to build your own network as well. And there's people from around the world on the call or who are going to be watching the recording. We have individuals from, Canada, US, UK, and Netherlands, and a few other places as well. So my name is Manpreet Dillon. I'm the founder of Veza Global. This for me, this is a really important. I love these calls because it's really exciting for me always to have these conversations when we're thinking about how we rise together and how we advocate for ourselves. Thinking about cultural experiences and what that might impact and what that looks like in the workplace as well. So as I mentioned, I'll do a quick presentation and then we're going to jump into breakout rooms afterwards. Or we might just do, because there's just a small group of us, we might just connect with here instead and just have a conversation here. So with that, I'll just introduce myself a little bit here. I'm just gonna do this. Sorry, I literally just fell over the washing machine, dishwasher. So my legs hurting at the same time. So I'm a little distracted from from that, but it's all good. It's always fun how that happens. Okay, so advocating for yourself. I would love to know, like as I mentioned, please introduce yourselves in the comments just so we do know who's here. Veza Global, we are an equity, diversity, inclusion firm. I started it in 2017. Really, for me, it was really important. How do we get more women of color in decision-making rooms? And how do we work with organizations to make equitable systems and processes so that we all get to be there? I decided at 13 to do this work. It was super important for me. I wanted to end, sexism, racism, and war. Everything that I'm doing right now and every project I'm working on aligns to that, which is really exciting. And I get to help others, step into this all the time. I've been a coach since 2009, internal auditor, HR professional. So happy to have conversations around your experiences in the workplace and what that might look like as well. And, and how do you, and how that translates into like creating more impact. That's really my biggest thing. How do we create more impact? How do we, all of you have amazing skills that you come with and knowledge, and how do we actually maximize that? And how do we allow you to provide you the supports that you deserve and desire so that you can kind of continue your impact in the world? Why we talk about this? Because as we know, historically, there's a lot of inequities in the world, and there's certain people who are constantly reminded of their differences. And what we want to do is actually harness those differences in a way that you're bringing the diversity of thought and how powerful that is. And thanks you for those of you who are introducing yourself in the chat as well. That's awesome. Okay. And so we're going to do a little bit of a visioning exercise. I'm a big, believer in meditation and just visioning. So we will do that, talk about the landscape, cultural pressures, advocating for yourself, and do a community breakout. So with the visioning, we're just going to take a moment because I know everyone's coming from different places. And so we're going to just take a deep breath. And if you have a moment, if you can, close your eyes, that's great. If you can't, just lower your gaze and just look into your own heart. And feel the presence of your own heart and the beat. Feel the power and the strength that you have. And feel yourself grounded to the center of the earth. And feel the power within your throat. That's where we really advocate for ourselves, through the throat, through the solar plexus, which is right under our rib cage. When both of those are optimized and they're operating at a very wonderful level, that's when we actually advocate for ourselves. And connecting with your golden star. And anywhere you feel like you've given your power away, just calling all of that power back to yourself. Anywhere you've taken anyone else's power, giving them their power back, and feeling yourself feeling filled up and feeling your own inner strength activating, magnifying, expanding. And then from this place, imagine yourself in a workplace or in a situation, and just watch yourself be the most powerful version of yourself. How would you advocate for yourself? What would you say? What would your presence be like? And what would you believe about yourself? Just calling that energy into your body, knowing that you always have the power to have the voice to stand up for yourself, regardless of what you were taught, what were you told, and what were the cultural and societal pressures before. And just feeling like the release of any cords and hooks and anything that's been stopping you from being the best version of yourself. And just notice how you're sitting. Do you sit a little differently, feeling this powerful? Are you breathing a little bit different? And where are you feeling this power within your body? And we're gonna just come back to the call. Feel your feet on the floor, feel yourself fully present. And if you have a piece of paper, you might want to write down a few notes for yourself and anything that came up for you. And also, if you'd like to share in the chat on how would you stand up for yourself? Like, who do you need to be? Like, what is that belief system? What do you need to believe about yourself? And what do you need to believe about others in order to advocate for yourself? For me, usually that is like, I usually need to believe that I'm confident, I am worthy, I'm good enough. I also need to believe that I deserve what I desire. And so I'd love to hear from you in the chat if there's anything like what came up for you as well. So why we're talking about this, and these are Canadian stats, but why we're talking about this is that we know that racialized women make less money than white men on average. And then if you add in a person of if you add disability, I live with, like, personally for me, like I live with a Lyme disease and I live with minor brain injury. And I know that the stats for people with disabilities is even way less, like 16% for physical disabilities. And if you have invisible disease, there's not enough stats on that still. One of the biggest things is that we know that for racialized women, it's going to take 267 years to close the economic gender gap. And so it's not going to be a lifetime, but we can still do what we can to progress it. And so that's why I like standing up for ourselves and breaking cultural like barriers and patterns, also family lineage and intergenerational trauma, releasing that in order to actually be standing in your self-worth and standing in your economic worth, and actually advocating for that change is really, really a powerful place. I know that many women my age and in the Gen X, like so many of us are the first women in our families to make more money than the men in our family. The first women in our family to have our own income that we didn't have to share with someone else. The first women in our family to like, go to school or graduate from post-secondary. And sometimes when we start thinking about that, and it's such an amazing thing, but also there's a lot of unprogramming that needs to happen. Like we have to learn how to manage money. We have to learn what it means to feel like that we know how our relationship with money and asking for it and standing in our worth looks like. We really have to heal the fact that we have this like higher sense of self-worth, that we can provide for ourselves. And what does like providing for ourselves look like, and how does it look like to support ourselves? When we're thinking about this, that's where like when we're doing any of this work, a lot of it is inner work as well, of like stepping into this deep level of your own knowledge and your own wisdom around your patterns and your beliefs, and your own intuition, and understanding what feeling this economic well-being would be like for you, and that economic freedom, what would that feel like for you when you're advocating? It's not just about, and economics isn't just about finances. It's about your career and your earnings, and it's about how you advance in the workplace and provide for decision making, and you're actually contributing to the economic well-being within the communities you live in as well. One of the things that we have found is that with the pandemic, we've actually taken a trend back where there's been a decrease in women in leadership and senior management roles, and women are stepping out of the workplace and for different reasons. So, there's there's work to be done. And then when you think about women of color, the percentages are lower than white women, as we know. So that is a landscape that we're dealing with, but it doesn't mean that we can't make a difference, because things are changing as we think about that. There's an increase, even in the last couple of years, about how many women of color have stepped into leadership roles. When we're thinking about when women thrive, I always like to bring up making sure like inclusive culture is important. When we're thinking about inclusive culture, we are looking at the safety and belonging, what diversity of thought looks like, understanding and recognizing people's strengths and their experiences and how they contribute to the workplace, taking a strength-based approach as well. Celebrating is important, celebrating within your personal life, but also celebrating in the workplace is super important. Connecting with people and getting to know them as individuals. Remembering that anyone that you're advocating for yourself with is also human. They're coming with their own biases, coming with their own experiences and their own relationship with people and women in general too. And how is that influencing them in the workplace? I've been in situations where working with these men who actually, it feels like they hate women. And this is not a negative about men at all, but it's also, I know a lot of women who hate women. And so it's like, and hate's a very strong word, but it comes across that way. And so it's like, remember actually getting to know them as individuals, feeling like, what is that experience? And why is my experience with them the way it is, and how can we change that together? So when we really get to know someone, we can actually shift the experience as well. And then also creating places of empathy and vulnerability, which is super important. So the benefits of a diverse and inclusive workplace, as we know, many of us we bring different creativity, different problem solving skills, and productivity is different when we have an inclusive workplace as well. And that's why, like, when you're advocating for yourself, you're contributing to this, you're making a difference in this way. And that's super important to always remember that when you're advocating, it's actually for the betterment of yourself, the society, and the communities that you serve. And there's also people who are going to learn from you, and they're going to gain from you, and they're going to be able to advocate for themselves because you've advocated for yourself. So when we're thinking about what are some of the ways why we don't advocate, there's barriers that exist. Those are internal and external. And there's also, and these barriers, it could be anything from like externally, it's like the discrimination, harassment, stereotypes, violence, and microaggressions that happen in the workplace. And that actually might deter us from advocating for ourselves. And also then it just might be an environment where the systems and processes don't benefit us. They benefit a certain type of person, certain type of personality, and a certain type of being. When you have internal barriers, that comes along with the confidence, imposter syndrome, and thinking about how you can overcome all of that and what that looks like within you. So when you're thinking about any of these things, just take a moment and think about like, why haven't you been advocating for yourself? What has stopped you from advocating, and what would help you to advocate for yourself differently? And then we think about dominant power structures as well. Like we live in societies where there's colonial patriarchy, and the systems are made for certain types of people based on historic events. And so how do you, learning to navigate those power structures and what that looks like. When we're looking at understanding power structures, again, always remembering that there's a human on the other side. When we start to remember that there's humans that we're dealing with, we actually start to minimize the power that others might hold over us. It actually minimizes the power that the systems have over us as well, because then we can actually stand in our own truth and stand in for what we believe in, and actually ask for what we need as well. And when we think about unequal access to labor markets, that's due to networking, due to access to opportunities, access to what's available in the hidden job market. And so that's where, the networking is really key, and connecting with others, having conversations, the informational interviews, also just, putting yourself in situations where you're going to meet people who are very different than you. You start to learn a lot of different things. Like throughout my entire career, I have always put myself in situations, and I'm like, at some points, I'm like, oh, why do I always make myself so uncomfortable? Put myself in situations and rooms that I'm like, I'm one of the only people there that thinks like me, looks like me, and I'm there because I'm like there to learn. I'm there to like, because you never know what you're going to gain from it. Also, the connection you're going to make, and also how it's going to help you spark an idea or spark a way of being and what that looks like as well. And so when you're advocating for yourself, there's a few things to think about. And you've heard of this before, but just really like, the exercise I would ask you to do is like understand on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, 1 being the least, how worthy do you feel for the next step that you want to take? And how worthy do you feel what you're trying to advocate for? And it might not be a worth thing. It might be a good enough thing. It might be a deservability. It might be a confidence. But understanding those numbers and then asking yourself from there is like, how would I get that to a 10? And how would I fully embody my worth? How would I fully embody my confidence? How would I fully embody being good enough? And what would that look like? And to get to that, we actually understand your values, your needs, and your strengths and your contributions. So I personally, like, when I need to advocate for myself in many ways, I actually will sit down and make these are the reasons why, and kind of like list them out, even if I'm not going to communicate them fully to someone else. But I need to be so clear with what my reasons are on why I deserve what I deserve. I need to be so clear on what value I bring to the table, what are my needs, and how do I need my needs met? And how do what have I done to, contribute to the situation in a much better way? And so all of those things, it's a really deep reflection within yourself. And then when you're having the conversation with the other person, is really understanding like, what do they value? And how do you communicate what you need in a way that what they value, and so that you can actually meet them find a common ground. Many times when we're not advocating for ourselves, we're not fully, and I've done this many times as well, but it's like we're not fully communicating our value. We're not fully communicating our what we're looking for. And so the other person doesn't know how to provide for us. So like the more clarity is super important as well. So when we're addressed, like, when we're talking to other people and when we're feeling like we're not being listened to, there's, barriers to inclusion that exist. Some of it's, it's us in terms of like our belief systems on where we feel like we're not included, what we feel like about belonging. But and then you can also change that for yourself. And that's where you're advocating for yourself. You're actually addressing those barriers to inclusion for yourself so that you are a part of conversations, you're part of rooms, you're part of situations that you feel like you haven't always been included in. Supporting others to be there as well, championing others, inviting them along, creating space for them to be there, mentoring them is super important. And then that's where throughout whatever roles that you have, and many of you have some amazing roles, addressing any systemic biases that might exist within your own roles and what that looks like, and how you can actually create that change within the organization, but for yourself as well. And I'm just going to touch upon this, and I'm not going to spend too much time so we can go do a breakout, is check the Deloitte's Quality of Inclusive Leader. There's really great articles on this as you're stepping in further into your leadership, really looking at these 6 leadership traits for inclusive leadership is super powerful. And it's always helps you be better. And as you're advocating for yourself, you can see what values you're bringing out of these elements to the conversation. Like, are you bringing, your personal values, the belief, the business case, but then also all of these leadership skills and whatever role it is, and whatever, leadership without a title, like Robin Sharma's book is like one of my favorite books, is really about stepping into like, how do you bring all of these traits into the workplace as well? So I'm gonna, with that, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just show something. And so with all of this, I'm gonna just mention a program that you're gonna get information in the email, but we're like, with the Rise of Women, there's different areas. We have the coaching program that kind of supports these different aspects, in which we kind of talked about the confidence, connectedness, consciousness, management, leadership, and culture impact. You're going to get more information on this and there's going to be elements of like this coaching program that will address some of the key issues that we addressed today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just wanted to bring forward, like, if you can look at the Deloitte model and look at this model, you will be the stronger voice at the table. You will have that internal dialogue that helps you to balance the feminine, masculine leadership skills. You will have that the culture, understanding the culture influence, the connectedness, and the impact, and how that all kind of makes you the best person and the best version of yourself. So with that, I'm going to stop recording so we can actually do a breakout. Well, we're not going to do breakouts. I think it will just connect.